Thomas deciding to visit her grandmother after some time, especially as her husband passed away 2 years ago, making her very upset. He comes to an empty house with no sign of his grandmother anywhere to be seen, with strange sounds being heard, making Thomas question his own sanity, left all alone in a large dark house in the middle of nowhere. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator, and welcome to Silent Nights. If you have any video or game suggestions, send them to me on my Twitter or subreddit. Keep in mind that this video will have spoilers, and with that in mind, let's begin. After the passing of his grandfather, the protagonist's grandmother becomes very sad, still very low in spirit even after 2 years of the occasion. The protagonist, feeling bad for the grandmother who lives alone, decides to visit her to make her feel a little better and to accompany her in her worst times. The protagonist used to visit her house often as a kid, but growing up, everyday tasks and commitment prevented him from visiting as much. As he drives to her house, which seems to be a large cabin in the middle of nowhere, he tries the door, but it seems to be strangely locked. Assuming the grandmother is not in or cannot hear the protagonist, he decides to find the spare key and gain access to the house. After a short walk, the protagonist comes across a note left behind by his grandmother, explaining how she is gifting him a sentimental item from the grandfather, a lighter, which he said in his last days should be given to Thomas, the protagonist. Tom happily takes the lighter, which proves to be very handy as he uses it to light up some parts of the house, working in his advantage as a gameplay mechanic. Getting to the kitchen diner, he notices how messy it is when he decides to clean up before the grandmother gets back home, which in a way shows a good gesture on how thoughtful Tom truly is. In a way, this could depict how passing of the grandfather has led to the grandmother becoming less organized and well put together, losing motivation and determination in life. Not waking up every day with a smile on her face, taking joy and pride in taking care of the house that they live in. Picking up some broken plates and rubbish, Tom takes in all the charms of the character of the house despite its clear imperfections. He reminisces on how he spent a summer here and how he wrote an essay about it to how wonderful it was. The great walks they had in the nature, spending quality time together that he can never forget, shaping him to be the man that he is today. Feeling the security and comfort he felt years back when he was just a kid, unwinding as if he is a kid again, with no concerns or worries of daily life. Unfortunately, all the warmth and happiness seems to somehow have faded away with the passing of the grandfather, with the grandma not being her energetic and bubbly self any longer. Reminiscing on the old days, how cozy and loved he felt, how every single item in the house has sentimental values due to the memories they created. Tom decides to have a nap due to being exhausted driving for hours to get here until the grandmother comes back home. Waking up sometime later, he finds himself engulfed in a house shrouded in absolute darkness. Feeling sad for the grandma, how horribly she has been living in the past several months or couple of years. Using the lighter he found earlier passed down to him from the grandfather, he lights up some candles and navigates his way. Not being able to help but feel a little concerned to where his grandmother is, Tom looks around the house when he starts hearing faint, eerie, and unfamiliar whispers and cries of a woman echoing from a far end part of the house. Going to his grandmother's room to double check if she's there, he finds a note left behind by the grandmother.
I cannot sleep without you. When I lie down in bed, I check to see if you are next to me. Maybe you're lying and reading your favorite book. But when I put my hand where you used to sleep, I understand that you are no longer next to me. Then I start to cry and howl, and I can't stop. In such moments, I go out for a walk and look at the moon because it reminds me of you and our evening walks. I miss you so much.
Reading this heartbreaking note, Tom can't hold back his tears, feeling the pain for a few short moments the grandmother has been feeling for the past few years every day, all alone. Trying to do his best to make the grandmother feel happy again, at least for today, he puts together the ingredients for a pancake so when the grandmother comes back, they could ask her to make him a pancake so this would take her back to the past, feeling the joy and warmth of being surrounded by loved ones. Waiting patiently for some time with no sign of the grandmother, Tom starts getting really hungry, still wanting to wait some more time to eat with the grandmother. That's when he starts hearing strange sounds such as footsteps making the floorboards creak in an unpleasant manner. Dismissing it as natural expansion and movement due to temperature fluctuations, the electronic items also turn on and off on their own, with notes suddenly appearing entailing the feelings of the grandmother in regards to the husband's passing. The notes further reveal how little things from the grandfather which used to irritate the grandmother are even precious now, with the grandmother missing every single aspect of her late husband. These notes left behind by the lonely grandmother are used as a coping mechanism to pour out all her bottled up emotions as she doesn't have anyone to speak to. Tom, reading them, feels every single emotion, not being able to help himself but to shed tears for a grandmother who used to be full of energy and warmth, who is now left all alone in a large, cold, dark house by herself. The protagonist losing his appetite due to the impact each note entails. He decides to take a quick shower before going out to look for his grandmother. As soon as he finishes, he hears the entry door opening and closing, followed by footsteps, believing it to be no other than the grandmother. Leaving the bathroom and calling for his grandmother, he believes her to be in a locked room as he hears crying, thinking the grandmother is feeling down today. No matter how much he tries, the grandmother doesn't respond, making him feel uneasy and very confused. Soon enough, finding another note, they start to take a more sinister turn.
I can't live without you, my love. I'm mad at myself, mad at everyone. Sometimes, out of anger, I start to smash everything around me. I destroy everything, just as I destroyed our lives. You died because of me. It's all my fault. It's all my fault.
This explains why there was a broken plate and stones lying around in the kitchen, and this might reveal a sinister secret that the grandmother could have had a part in the grandfather's death. That could be whether direct or indirect, because of infidelity or even directly. But again, this might be due to the mixed emotions the grandmother feels, feeling as if it's all her fault for her immense pain. That's when the protagonist hears a knock from the main door, thinking the grandmother might not in fact be in the room, with all of it being his imagination, as who else could be knocking this late at night in the middle of nowhere. As he goes to check the door, he witnesses a demonic being standing outside when it suddenly disappears, making Tom jump in fear, not believing his own eyes. Tom, despite all the horrifying paranormal events, stays in order to find his grandmother, not being prepared to leave her behind. Tom, deciding to go out to look for his grandmother, he fetches a flashlight and a raincoat and he goes out searching for her. Nearby, there is a construction site where he goes in hopes of getting some information from the workers. Unfortunately, all the workers seem to have gone to a nearby cafe to rest and wait for the rain to stop, leaving a note behind that they did in fact witness an old woman pass by going to a totem. And despite trying to get her attention, she walked on, completely dismissing the workers as if she's in a state of complete void and absent-mindedness. Reaching the totem, he finds a basket and a tent, thinking they might belong to the grandmother. The totem is dedicated to the spirit of the forest who guides lost people in the forest back to their homes. Not understanding how any of this could be associated to his grandmother, an awfully scared and confused Tom carries on, trying to find his troubled granny. Soon, entering a nearby abandoned building which seems to have been a hospital, is being investigated by authorities as a crime scene where Tom finds a note by one of the officers. It entails information about the nature of the investigation, where the killer's footprints were left outside. The officers even think the grandmother could be a suspect as she acts very strangely despite the footprints being abnormally large, not matching a grandmother. Despite clear signs ordering people not to enter the premises, Tom investigates further, finding a note written in blood of someone requesting more meat. Finding pools of blood painting the floors, Tom treads carefully, believing his grandmother must be here somewhere. He then comes to the harrowing scene of a body bag, with another note written in blood that a mysterious entity with echoing whispers instructs someone to kill, someone who wants to feed on the victims. After some quick exploration, coming to the horrifying scene of a crawling demonic entity appearing and suddenly disappearing, the protagonist quickly leaves, finding some apples which he offers to the totem. He then suddenly hears cries of his grandmother by the lake, being wet and freezing under the pouring rain when he rushes towards her to give her some comfort. After wrapping her with his raincoat, they go home with Tom promising her that everything will be okay, bringing the story to an end. Some parts of the story seem irrelevant, such as the totem, the crime scene investigation where a mysterious entity needs to be fed, and the paranormal events taking place within the house. But based on one of the notes we find by the grandma, we learn the source of her sadness is not simply just the passing of her husband, but also the gravity of guilt that she carries, feeling his death has been her own fault. It's been also mentioned by the workers at the construction site that she was completely unfazed by them, the cold and the rain, walking towards a totem which embodied the spirit of the forest which guides lost people back to their homes. This directly relates the grandmother somehow to this strange totem or the spirit. What if the grandmother has been praying to this totem to bring back his deceased husband back home, so maybe his spirit would alone keep her company? We know how defeated and cold the grandmother started to feel after his passing, losing the sense of herself even after 2 years, crying and howling every day. In a note she mentions how at times she feels his presence on her bed, so much to the point that she feels the physical presence of something. What if, just what if, the spirit or the spirits the deity of the totem summoned is not of the grandmother's husband but other malevolent entities, who directly caused the haunting of the house and the murder that took place not far from the house. Also, one of the notes mention how a specific person hears the whispers of him, inciting her to violence and brutal killings. What if the grandma thinks the spirit of her deceased husband has been summoned, but instead, a flesh-hungry demonic entity poses as her husband, manipulating her to kill unsuspecting victims so the entity can feed on them? The confused and broken grandma, wanting nothing more but to be reunited with her late husband, is willing to do anything just for that unrealistic wish to come true, even going so far to commit murder. The investigators mention in a note that nothing out of ordinary was witnessed in the area apart from the killer's footprints and the howling and grieving grandmother, but the footprints did not match her, as in fact they resembled something very strange that shocked them, something unhuman. So it's possible that the demonic entity that was summoned has physical form, leaving footprints behind, having supernatural abilities to not make anything seem out of ordinary. And of course, who could ever suspect a grieving frail grandma to be an accomplice of such brutal acts? Realizing she only summoned demonic evil spirits instead of her late husband, the grandma can't help but feel more guilt, being even more sad and lonely, feeling even worse than she felt before, being indirectly the culprit of a murder and her house being haunted, with spirits ridiculing her by pretending to be her husband. And also in regards to her feeling guilty for her husband's passing, it could be mixed emotions that she feels, being all alone in a haunted house in the middle of nowhere with no one to talk to, slowly seeing herself losing her own sanity. Or maybe she had also some affiliation to the totem or the spirit of the forest, which indirectly caused the death of the husband. And that's about it for this video, folks. I know the endings seem to finish in a rush and kind of being incomplete, but keep in mind all I said are my personal theories, so they are not really canon. You can let me know down in the comment section below what your own theories are about the ambiguous story. Either way, thank you folks for being here. It's been your host Star, and I will catch you on the next video. Have a fantastic day.